Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping straight into the AI news from July 8th, 2025. We're going to cut through the noise, get you the key insights. It's not just about what's happening, but really why it matters.
Exactly. And the pace is just incredible right now. We're seeing stuff across the board, new models, new research directions, real world uses, even, well, user controversies.
Yeah.
It's a lot to track, so we'll try and hit the
Okay,
highlights.
let's do it. Let's unpack this model news first.
Yeah.
There's quite a bit of buzz around AI21 Labs and their Jamba 1.7 model. What's making waves here?
Right, so Jumbo 1.7, the big thing is they're sticking with this hybrid SSM-Transformer design.
Okay, SSM-Transformer, state-space models plus transformers.
Exactly. SSMs are, really efficient for super long sequences, long context, without needing massive compute. Transformers are powerful, but can struggle there. So the combo lets Jamba 1.7 hit this impressive 256,000 token context window.
Wow, 256K, that's huge for context.
It is, and they're saying they've improved grounding, better instruction following too, so it should stick to the point better, follow directions more accurately, even in long chats.
Sounds pretty potent, especially for complex tasks needing all that context. But I've heard some hesitation from the community too. What's the other side of this?
Yeah, that's definitely a thing. So AI21 put it out as open weight models on Hugging Face. There's a mini 52 billion parameter one and a large at 399 billion. Both use FP8 precision, which helps with speed and memory.
Okay, so what's available?
It is, but there's this rug pull clause in the license that's got people, well, skeptical. It raises questions about long-term commitment and commercial use.
The fine print. Always the fine print.
Right. And beyond the license, there just aren't independent benchmarks out yet to really back up the efficiency claims AI21 is making. So developers are kind of waiting for that third-party validation before jumping in with both feet.
Okay, so promising tech, but with some community side-eye on the licensing and the need for independent proof. Got it. Now, moving from specific models to something a bit more foundational. There's interesting talk about diffusion models, their limits, and maybe a new challenger, energy-based transformers or EBTs. What's the core idea?
Yeah, this is potentially really interesting for where LLMs could go next. Current diffusion models are great for generation, but they can sometimes struggle to generalize well. Part of that is because their math involves summing things up over the entire training set, which isn't ideal for adapting to totally new stuff.
Okay.
So energy-based transformers, EBTs, are being floated as a different approach. Conceptually, they might learn and represent information in a way that gets around some of these limitations. The big claim, or maybe hope, is that EBTs could potentially scale better than standard feed-forward transformers, maybe unlock much bigger, more capable models down the line. It's early days, but a novel direction.
Changing the fundamental architecture. That could be huge if it pans out. All right, and speaking of performance, let's swing over to Google. Stone Bloom. We're hearing some pretty wild things about how it's doing in the LM arena. What's this mean if you need, like, the absolute best tool for something really tricky?
Stonebloom's definitely making noise. Reports suggest it's leading the pack in a lot of areas. Open-ended reasoning, math problems, coding, even generating complex SVG images.
Leading, like, better than the current champs.
Anecdotally, yes. People are reporting things like 100% success rates on tough prompt puzzles, outdoing models like OpenAI's latest, Claude Opus 4, Gemini 2.5 Pro, even DeepSeek.
Wow.
Yeah. And there seems to be a similar variant called Wolfstride performing just as well. So Google's clearly pushing hard here.
Okay, but is it perfect across the board?
Well, that's the interesting nuance. While it seems incredibly strong generally, there was one report where it struggled with a specific WebDev Arena task creating a Pokemon battle UI compared to an older Gemini 2.5 model.
Huh. Interesting.
It really highlights that top performance is becoming more specific, right? Even the best models might have specific weaknesses. You really need to test them for your particular use case, not just rely on general leaderboards.
That's a really good point. Benchmarks aren't everything. Specific tasks matter. And staying with Google, they also just updated the Gemini API, right? Something about a new batch mode. What are the practical upsides there?
Yeah, this looks pretty useful for businesses and researchers. The new batch mode basically offers a huge 50% cost saving for processing really large jobs.
50%, that's significant.
It really is. Makes big analysis projects much more affordable. Plus, they guarantee a 24-hour turnaround, which gives predictability. It supports big data files, and importantly, it has context caching.
Context caching, so remembers previous stuff.
Exactly. It remembers the conversation or the context, making later calls in a sequence faster and cheaper. Huge for things like deep research needing lots of document analysis, or big enterprise batch jobs like summarizing tons of data. It makes Gemini a much stronger contender as a low-cost, high-performance API for those large-scale needs.
Okay, cheaper, predictable turnaround for big jobs. That's definitely going to appeal to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Now, let's shift gears a bit. This next piece is, well, it's a fascinating mix of tech ambition and national strategy. China pouring serious money into brain chips. What's the deep dive there?
Right. China's investment in brain-computer interfaces, BCIs, is really ramping up. The government's backing a lot of clinical trials. They're focusing on assistive tech, especially for paralysis. We're seeing devices like Enio, that's a wireless, minimally invasive chip that controls pneumatic gloves, helping with hand movement.
Okay, so practical medical uses.
Definitely. And also NeuroAxis, which is a higher density system using electrocorticography, basically reading brain signals more directly that can apparently support real-time Mandarin output and control devices.
Impressive assistive tech. How does it stack up globally, say against U.S. efforts? And what's this talk about a secret arms race?
Well, based on what's public, these efforts might still lag behind some top U.S. programs in areas like signal clarity or how mature the clinical trials are, but China iterates very quickly. They're focusing heavily on neuromorphic hardware chips designed to kind of mimic the brain's efficiency, and just the sheer scale of their investment means they could catch up fast.
Right, to scale factor.
Exactly, and that leads to the speculation. Because BCI tech has obvious dual-use potential, there's a lot of chatter, off the record, that the tech being developed behind closed doors, not just in China, but elsewhere too, is way ahead of what's public, suggesting a sort of hidden competition, a secret state BCI arms race. It's speculative, but given the potential, you can see why people wonder.
Yeah, that definitely adds another layer to the whole BCI field. Geopolitics meets neuroscience. Okay, switching back to upcoming releases. Grok 4. Lots of anticipation. Elon Musk announcing a live stream.
Yeah.
What are people expecting, and are there any concerns floating around?
Yeah, the hype is definitely building for Grok 4. Musk's announcement set expectations high for top performance,
Oh,
but there are definitely community concerns. A big one is the training data. It reportedly relies heavily on social media, specifically Twitter X, and people are asking, can a model trained primarily on that kind of data be truly unbiased or reliable for serious tasks? It's a fair question.
bias from social media data? Yeah, that's a classic AI problem.
It is, and there's also just general skepticism. Some folks are saying, look, if XAI misses this announced release deadline again, it'll seriously damage trust in whether the model is actually coming or if the announcements mean anything.
So high hopes mixed with real worries about data quality and delivery timelines. A lot riding on this release for XAI.
For sure, user trust is key.
And speaking of user trust, that brings us perfectly to our last point. This situation with Cursor.ai. Users are pretty upset, calling it a rug pull. What happened there?
Ugh, yeah, this one hit a nerve with a lot of developers. Cursor.ai basically switched up their pricing model pretty abruptly. They had advertised an unlimited plan.
Okay, unlimited.
Right. And then they shifted to limited plans, which meant users suddenly started getting hit with unexpected charges, especially for using the Sonnet 4 model integrated within Cursor.
Ouch. Unexpected bills are never fun.
No. And it wasn't just the money. Users also started reporting technical problems, like the app freezing when saving files,
Yeah.
issues reading large files, problems with IP allowless for their background agent, stuff that really messed up their workflow.
So it broke their tools and cost them unexpected money. Yeah, I can see why they'd be mad.
Absolutely. So you got widespread accusations of a rug pull, basically feeling misled and abandoned, and complaints about a lack of transparency. A lot of users started looking for alternatives.
And Cursor respond.
They did. They eventually issued an official apology about the pricing change, acknowledging the user backlash. But it's a stark reminder, isn't it, how crucial clear communication and stable service are. You break that trust, it's really hard to get back, especially when there are other options out there.
Definitely a cautionary tale.
Hmm,
So,
yep.
wrapping things up for today. What a range. We've seen Jamba 1.7 pushing long context, Stonebloom hitting top performance, but with nuances.
Right, and the theoretical potential of EBTs, the whole geopolitical angle with China's BCI investments.
And finally, the very real user impact when things go wrong, like with Cursor.ai. It really shows how fast things move, technically, strategically, and even in terms of business models and user trust.
It really does. If you try and connect all these dots, it paints a picture of AI evolving on so many fronts simultaneously. It's not just tech, it's ethics, economics, usability. It all intertwines.
Which maybe raises a final thought for everyone listening. As AI gets faster and more capable seemingly every day, what kind of literacy do we actually need most to navigate this future? Is it deep technical skill, critical thinking about claims, or maybe just being really adaptable? That's a great question to chew on. What is the essential skill set for this AI-driven world? Something for you all to consider. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Stay curious, keep exploring, and we'll catch you on the next one.